In the Wild West world of podcasting, there is one podcast that is authentic and genuine and continues to stand tall in its originality. Based on a passion for his guests, their work, and his love of podcasting, Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic podcast get amazing, diverse, unique guests found nowhere else. The variety and quality are endless. There is something for everyone. Derek Thomas is the hero you deserve. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector. Welcome to Monday Morning Critic podcast. Here is Derek Thomas.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd, and I'm here tonight to read the news from across this great world of ours.
So they pay you to tell stories. I ain't never heard of that as a thing a man can do.
Well, it's not a rich man's occupation, as you can see.
Hey! Stop! Stop! I'm not gonna hurt you!
Do you understand English?
Dog jeg kan godt
Friend. It says your name is Anna Leonberger. Indians took you when they attacked your family 6 years prior. Her mother, father, and sister were... well, they passed. She's got family down in Castroville.
Captain, why are you doing this?
She needs to laugh and dream. She needs new memories.
Road's closed.
Is that the law?
It is now.
Captain, you, Johanna. I do not have a clue as to the care of a child. It's a photograph. That's my wife. You can certainly handle a horse. Right there's a horse.
Horse. Captain.
Captain. Make no mistake. Captain.
Word is she's that captive out of Wichita Falls.
What do you want?
How much you want for her?
This child is not for sale.
So she thinks she's an Indian now.
She's something in between. Ladies and gentlemen, these are stories of men and women very much like you, waiting for better days to come.
You can't have her! And I'm taking her home!
Thank you. Let me say this first. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of your work and very excited that you decided to come on.
Oh, well, that's a pleasure. I looked at some of the interviews you've done, and the minute I saw that Dirk Benedict was one of your subjects, I was like, well, I have to get in that company. If I can be part of the A-team, I am in.
Once you see Dirk Benedict, you know, I'm still trying to get Mr. T and Dwight Schultz, so we're trying to make that come true. But I'm proud of what I've done. I feel like I've worked hard, but
It's so great. When I was in college, Mr. T came and was given an award, and he spoke to the students. And one of his messages was, "Stay in school." But what was especially good and potentially funny about this message was that he was saying this to Harvard. Stay in school.
I would say that message has been well received before he got there. So I just want to backtrack a little bit in your life, right? So born in Toronto, and I know you've been around a little bit, but how does somebody become fluent in, like, I could speak Polish, but you could speak French, Italian, and your conversational in German, which I would consider being fluent in 3. How does that happen?
Well, I actually am fluent in 3 because I speak Spanish really well as well.
So let's make that 4.
High school. I mean, I went to a school in Toronto called UTS, the University of Toronto Schools, and we had languages as electives. And so I took French, Spanish, and German. And so my German, I stopped after high school, but both in French and Spanish, I went to live in those countries. I did an exchange to Spain when I was 16 and lived with a family in Madrid. And then I took a year off after high school before going to university. And during that period, I thought that I was going to just be a writer. And so I went to cafes and smoked cigarettes and read Ulysses in a kind of very performative way, like with a cigarette in my mouth and the book up so that everyone could see what I was reading, and really didn't get much writing done. And at a certain point, my parents said, this year is kind of being frittered away, and they organized an exchange with a family in France in a town called Cognac, which turned out to be really lucky because if you go to the big cities, sometimes people will speak to you in English because more people are fluent in English in the big cities. So anyway, I was in a place where people didn't speak English as much, and I really learned French and Spanish that way. Italian, I lived there with my husband when he was working in fashion during the time that I was, during that time I also got pregnant with our first daughter. And then German I just kept from high school. So I have a feeling, I feel strongly about languages because I've got kids in school now. And the thing about languages is I don't think we learn them to get good grades. I don't think we learn them to, be able to write an essay for our teacher. I think we learn languages to speak with other people. And so putting yourself in the context where, somebody you have a crush on speaks that language is really the only way to learn a language. So that's how I learn them. Or in the case of, German for me, I enjoy it very much. And then I sort of pride myself on, people think I'm German. I mean, I get cast as German people a lot. And that when I was on Lufthansa at one point, I spoke a little bit of German and then got spoken to as a German in return, I think because I give off that vibe. So that's been kind of a fun sort of game for me to play, is to be German.
Yeah, and I think it is vital, Winsome, that people do learn a second language, right? I was lucky enough to have my grandmother teach me, but I feel like lately, last 5-10 years, I find myself practicing more so I don't lose it. Because there was a time where I wasn't using it a lot and I lost it. But I think the importance of people knowing at least 2 languages, I think it's vital, right?
Well, it helps get one to, it kind of opens up the possibility of another world, because the minute we change our language switch in our brain, I think we have to start thinking differently. It's like, your path to expression is rerouted, and therefore I think a whole lot of other things are as well. So I think one can begin to understand other culture. You can begin to understand other philosophy, how different things might be important to different people. So I see it kind of as a tool to understanding how other people think and how other people live their lives, and that ends up increasing one's empathy and ability to connect. And then obviously as an actor, that kind of thing comes in really, really handy. That, and then my second thing that I really love is accents. I love learning accents, doing accents, and I just have so much fun with that. And that is a little bit the same ways because the way one speaks, if you've had a certain kind of life that leads you to a certain accent, is different than the way you speak if you've had a different life and a different accent. So it's this, again, the same kind of jumping into another person's skin or soul.
What's the most difficult accent you think that you have, not that you have trouble with, but that you feel is the most difficult to master? I would think, is it the Scottish brogue? Is that what you say, or is it Irish brogue?
No. Oh, well, I think people say brogue for Irish. Do they say Scottish? Brogue. I don't think
brogue goes.
But no, for me, Scottish is totally easy. That's like great. And you've got Glasgow and Edinburgh is a little bit more posh. Maybe it's a bit more McGonagall.
Wow.
And then Irish, my mum was from Dublin, so.
Oh, okay.
So
that's right.
I'm about to do an experimental film where I play an Irish. It's sort of based on The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, and I'm playing an Irish maid, a parlour maid from the 19th century. So I think I'll be doing like a real Dublin accent for that one.
Your theater work is unbelievable, and you can, for those listening, even include you've done a few one-person shows. I don't know how anyone does that, right? The theater part alone is scary, but to carry a one-person show and to do that, I don't know how. Is there pressure in that, Winsome, more than a theater performance with an entire crew?
Maybe, but there's also a kind of ability to fly by the seat of your pants and to play, because, if you change something, you're not going to throw a spanner into anyone else's works. It's just you up there. So I've found that there's both freedom and obviously the challenge to shoulder an entire show. But one of my first theatrical experiences that really moved me was as a teenager in Toronto. I saw a solo show called The Importance of Being Oscar that was put on by a little theatre company called Anna Leonberger Productions. That was the two women who ran it, excuse me, Judith McGilligan and Mary Durkin, were friends of my mother. And actually that was the first company that I ever acted in Toronto. We put on Ulysses, talking of, by James Joyce. It was called Bloomsday, and I played like a Dublin street urchin, and also Sissy Gertie MacDowell. Which one is the one? There's the one who's masturbating on the beach. Gertie MacDowell or Sissy. I must have been Gertie, because I said, "Look, Sissy, it's fireworks." that was my line. So anyway, I saw this show, The Importance of Being Oscar, moved me incredibly. And I think it was really because in a solo show, imagination is required, because both on the part of the performer and the audience, because it's a little more like storytelling, even if it's a very enacted storytelling with lots of different characters. It's one person telling it all, presenting it all, being it all. And there was something about putting myself in that person's hands and hearing the story of Oscar Wilde, which was the subject of The Importance of Being Oscar, that moved me very, very much. And then when I was in college, in my senior year, I put on that play myself, and that was my first solo show. I did The Importance of Being Oscar, and really grew to love it. I loved the challenge of having an hour and a half of material to present to an audience and to have it memorized and to ride those waves. And it's also been really a useful skill when I did my show, This Is Mary Brown, a few years ago, which was about my mother, directed by Brad Rouse. And he had suggested that I write about her. And we developed this show in my living room. And so I would invite people to come over and watch it as it was in development, small groups of people, like 5 or 10 people at a time. And I was so close to them, and I could see that the audience, some people have very attentive audience manner, and some people look like they've totally checked out. And what was interesting to me was afterwards to talk to those people and to see that even the people who looked like they had checked out, or who had a very cross face, like a kind of resting angry face in the audience, also loved the show. And that for me just kind of reminded me that as a performer, my job is to do the show and to put myself into it always, and to be as present as I can at every moment, and to trust that the material will carry the audience, because you don't know what the audience is thinking or feeling. And sometimes as a performer, you can get in your own head. And so I actually find that sort of technically and spiritually as a performer, doing solo shows and having those difficult moments has been a gift of kind of reminding me to be present always.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And you mentioned your Harvard earlier. You really have put a lot of yourself into your craft, right? Harvard College, for those listening, study acting, Shakespeare Company, Manhattan Film Institute, on and on and on. Do you look at that as all of that contributed to you being an actor, or is there one that stands out more than the others, Winsome? Is there one of those that you feel maybe drove your skill as an actor more than the others, or is it kind of a potpourri of things that have put you where you are today?
I mean, it's for sure a potpourri. It's all of them. But if I had to pick, I'd say I'd pick two. I studied Shakespeare Company. I did a winter intensive there. That's this wonderful performance and school in the Berkshires in Lenox, Massachusetts, and I did that in January of. Gosh, I remember I was 30, so I was much, I had not had official acting training really until then. I'd taken a few classes, but I'd never gone to drama school. I had just kind of started a lot in experimental theater in New York, and then I got cast in a Roger Corman Productions Concord New Horizons film called what was it called? Nightfall, shooting with David Carradine in India, and I played the kind of second female lead, and that sent me off to LA, where I started working in film and television, and again taking little classes. But it was going to Shakespeare Company and being there for these long weeks with other performers and really extraordinary teachers that set me on a path of learning and invigorated something in me. And then, much more recently, one of my agents suggested that I take a class with a fellow who's a quite famous New York acting teacher called Bob Krakauer. And his method, which is really kind of simple, it's really about, simple and yet it takes practice, but it's really about understanding what the story is. What is the writer trying to express with this scene, and then making sure that you as an actor are hitting those notes, that you're really in the story. And his point is that a lot of actors kind of skip the action lines. I mean, skip the stuff that's actually happening in a visual medium, which obviously anything on the screen is a visual medium. And so those two places, kind of studying with Bob Krakauer, which I've done a few times, and Shakespeare Company, I suppose are my big ones. But then I also studied with physical theater companies in Europe, the Odin Theatret and Roberta Carreri and the Grotowski group in Italy. So that kind of experimental physical theater has been also part of my formation.
Yeah, and it's funny because Lenox is like 40 minutes from where I am right now, and I swear I have heard somebody else say they did a Shakespeare in the Berkshires. I swear, I want to say it was maybe Austin Pendleton, but
of course,
yeah. There's been a few that I feel like in that area, the Berkshire area, where it's kind of been like a lot of Shakespeare plays. That's kind of where they're performed.
Well, this summer I saw King Lear with Christopher Lloyd in it, which was so great.
Wow!
And they have a kind of they're going back in their new stage. It's not microphoned, or if it is, it's very subtly microphoned. So one has the sense of something that is truer to what it would have been in Shakespeare's time. A little bit like what Mark Rylance did with the Globe. I don't know if you got the chance to see when he came with the Globe Theatre and did Twelfth Night and Richard III. So amazing. Such incredible performances of all men in New York City, but they had candles on the stage and everything. But anyway, Shakespeare Company does wonderful work.
And I don't know how you do it, Winston. You especially, memorizing or learning these lines, right? There's occasions where I could never do your job ever in a million years. But there's on occasion where if I'm moved by something, whether it's The Crown or something in Shawshank, where I try to just act out one or two lines just by myself in a car, I could barely remember one line. You're remembering Shakespeare, which is like a completely different language in itself. Lines upon lines, pages upon pages. How is that done? Like, it leaves me in awe of how actors do that, especially you with your background. I don't know. Is there a secret to it, or is it just good old fashioned hard work plus what you've learned along the way?
I suppose the latter, but I bet that you do memorize lines and you do memorize stories, for example, like a story that you would tell about your life, or perhaps a joke that you already know. You kind of hit those same beats again and again when you tell it.
Right.
That's a kind of memorization. You can sing along to song lyrics. That's memorization. And so I think that actually we do have, I mean, people do already memorize a lot of stuff. For me, memorizing complicated text was something of a party trick that I enjoyed doing early on, because somebody, actually it was my friend Brad Rouse, directed me doing Gertrude Stein years ago. And those Gertrude Stein lines were, complicated and in some ways nonsensical. But the job was to find the sense in them, to find what I was saying. And then the lines could come back to me with much greater ease. So I think the trick to learning lines is to know what the story you're telling is, and to be in it in the way that your character is presenting it. And then for solo shows, often I've written them myself, so that makes it that little bit easier.
Right.
And for Shakespeare, I think there's, with Shakespeare, with the verse, with the blank verse, the 10 beats per line, that gives you a real sense of meter to know where you are, and then often you have rhyme helping you at the end as well. So
right.
Because Shakespeare's actors, I think, had to learn their pieces very quickly, and so they had to, con. I think in Midsummer Night's Dream, the word con your parts is brought up, but they had to do it quickly, and so the meter and the rhyme, I think, helped them to know that they were getting it right.
Right. What is it you think, Winsome, that you love so much about being an actor? Right. I've heard you mention things here and there of why you enjoy like certain things, but what is it down deep, the one, maybe two things that you just really love about your craft? What's the one thing that really shines brighter than the rest, I suppose?
I think that being an actor is a very spiritual thing for me. I think it is about connecting both deeply with myself and with the other people who are there. It's about coming prepared and also ready to be surprised. And so it's like dancing, or flying, or something that is both tremendously exciting and a little scary and really fun, but also deeply connected. So honestly, I feel like it's the kind of the closest thing to prayer for me, except for potentially prayer, which I don't pray all the time, but I certainly do sometimes. And that, and then I don't know. It's just, actors are great. I love actors. They're alive. They're fun. They're always really smart, and sometimes coming from all kinds of different backgrounds, because when you are putting together the world, as one is when you're writing plays or for television or cinema, I don't know, you're trying to get, usually in a story, lots of different kinds of people. And so I love to travel. I love to travel in the world. I love to travel through reading books, and to travel through meeting people and to hear about their experiences. So kind of the people and the presence, if I had to say the two things.
Yeah, that's well said. And before we dive into your filmography, which I do love, there's a couple of things. What's a show or a movie that you watch, whether it's something you've binge watched or a movie you've seen in the theater and you've rewatched it, that absolutely brings you to tears, guaranteed? Is there a movie or a show that's like that for you?
Gosh, as you were saying that, I was thinking of the show Fleabag, which
good one. Yep.
Absolutely did. And I'm a writer as well, and one of the things that I so admired in her writing is that it's absolutely hilarious, and she's doing some really sometimes very broad comedy, and then she comes in with these moments of deep human connection that absolutely make me cry, and also surprise me because I didn't see it coming. And what I love about that writing is that it kind of encompasses the the laughter and the pain of being a human. And so I love that. I mean, I'm trying to think what, in terms of just crying.
Just crying. I mean, just emotional.
Beaches. I was on a plane. I saw beaches. I cried hysterically. But that was a particular occasion, you know.
Yeah. That's great.
I'm a sucker for a good tearjerker.
And the reason I asked that question is because when I'm going through your filmography, the two pieces that I really, really love, I found myself very emotional at. So I said, I'm going to ask her what moves her. So yeah, so that's a great answer. But I have to say, you are part of the DC universe in Supergirl. That has to be a special kind of thing, right?
It sure was. Me with my sister witches.
Yes.
It was very exciting to play alongside Angeli J and Rosemary Hochschild. The three of us were sort of sister witches from Krypton, and had so much fun. And one of the things that I loved about doing that was working with the stunt team. They just were so incredible, and I got to do a lot of my own stunt fighting, except where getting thrown across the room. The stunt woman would do that. And and I would just get to land. So I did all the sort of the fight choreography, but the falls they would do. And I just thought, these people are so generous with their work. Well, gosh, that just reminded me of I'm the unknown stunt man. I make
the Fall Guy
would look like a star.
Oh, good. That's great. The Fall Guy. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
They just were. I mean, they were wonderful. I've had the privilege of working with dancers as well. I was in a play years ago with Wendy Whalen, who was dancing the role of Cleopatra while I was acting the role of Hillary Clinton. And, you know, she's a prima ballerina, the lead ballerina for New York City Ballet for years and years. And now she's one of the artistic directors there, or the artistic director perhaps. But, you see somebody with that discipline, with that athleticism in their body, and yet that generosity and humility to just keep working with other partners, to give it all the time. People who work with their bodies like that, I find them to be totally inspiring as artists, athletes, and human beings as well.
Well said. And speaking of tears, one of my biggest, I thought was a top 3 movie last year. National Border Review has it as top 10. I felt the movie deserved more recognition because I thought it was absolutely wonderful. It's storytelling at its best. I've probably seen the trailer 200 times in the movie, another 50, and that is News of the World. I have a lot of thoughts on this movie, right? But just talk about your experience, what you think of it. I quite truthfully, I don't think I saw a better movie last year.
Oh, what a wonderful thing to hear. My experience making that film and playing Anna Leonberger in that film was a joy from start to finish. It truly was. And in terms of what the movie was, well, I got there and on the first day, I was in the hair and makeup trailer, just getting fitted for my hair and no makeup, for my no hair and no, that's not true. There was a little bit of, making me look redder than I already was, and greasing up my hair a bit to make it look, authentic to the 19th century, to the life of a Texan German farm woman.
Yeah. But
I was in the hair and makeup trailer, and Tom Hanks, whom I hadn't met, came in and he said, "You must be Winsome." And I said, "Oh, yes, well, indeed I am." And we chatted for a bit, and I told him that I thought that the film was the balm that the country needed right now. The country at the time that the film was being made was quite riven, and we still are in a position of splitness. There's kind of us and them, no matter who you are. And
we sure are.
That is, that's something that I hope that we can move forward through. And News of the World takes place right after the Civil War, and is about putting the land back together, putting the country back together, finding a way to move forward together. And so I said to him, I really think this is the balm we need. And Tom Hanks, who's a really funny guy. I mean, funny, generous. I mean, obviously, anyone who's watched him over the years knows that he's hilarious, but he's funny in person too. He goes, "Easy now," because I was gushing a bit. He goes, "Easy now. We can still F this up." And he was as wonderful as one could be. And Paul Greengrass, the director, whose work I absolutely adore. I love all his kind of documentary style films, like the one about Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland and United Flight 97, as well as obviously the Bourne films. And he's incredible. And on our first day of shooting, he said to me, "We've got all the time we want. We're going to just have a really great, easy day. We've got all the time in the world." And that kind of putting me at my ease, I found that to be so generous and masterful as well, because that gets better work out of people. You know, when everybody's just feeling great, because you come onto a set. I mean, that the job of an actor coming onto a set where other people have been working, where the rhythms are kind of already in place. It's a little bit like being the new kid in school, and which lunch table do I sit at, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so to be welcomed as warmly as that, just makes your shoulders drop and makes your work better.
Yeah, and I feel like some directors do the opposite, right? They kind of they want tension because they think that brings out the best. And you're right. Not that this is one of those moments, but Matt Damon tells a story about when he filmed Saving Private Ryan, how the rest of the cast had to go through a week of like boot camp, but Spielberg purposely held him off to the side and he didn't have to go through that. So there would be some resentment that obviously translates in the story. But it's so refreshing to hear you say that Paul Greengrass really has a calming, reassuring sense about him. That, to me, that's the optimal environment to work in.
Well, and I think you're right. It probably is a choice. I think, but it also is optimal. I mean, I worked with Jonathan Demme as well, and he had that same. He had that same. I mean, he was just I think he was a very spiritual person, and he brought a kind of love and. I mean, that's it. He brought love to the work, and the environment of the set was full of love. Even though we were working on a film that was based on the Ibsen play Master Builder, and so there's a lot of brittleness and pain in that story, but there was a lot of love on the set. So I've been lucky mostly to work in things where the environment was positive, supportive, where actors, hung out in each other's trailers, or if it's a play where we, became friends afterwards. That's something that I love. And as I mentioned before, I love the people who choose to do this with their lives. And so, including not just the actors, but the technicians, the crew, I think these are really special people. And so having that is a joy, but I can understand why, like, Carl Theodor Dreyer, the very early 20th century film director, who made such masterworks as Joan of Arc. He had Renee Falconetti, who played Joan of Arc, in solitary confinement.
Wow.
For a month, I believe, with sort of food dropped through the door. And so when she came to play, when the cameras started rolling a month later, she had a twitch in her face. I mean, she looks possessed, and obviously that film is one of the most absolutely beautiful films in the world. And I don't know enough of the story. Did she consent to this? Was this did she ask for it? In order to give the greatest verisimilitude of somebody like Joan of Arc and her relationship to God and hearing those voices. I don't know whose idea it was, but I do think that actors often sacrifice or donate their bodies and their spirits to work, and that is again, one of the things that makes them so special.
No, I agree. When and I get you're a total pro, but when Tom Hanks walks in, is there a starstruck moment for you? Or are you like, you know what? I've been down this road before with others. Is there a moment like that for you?
Oh, of course. I mean, of course, starstruck. And that's why I was gushing. I was like falling over myself. This is just so amazing. And the writing. And I mean, to be here with you, it's just, and that's where it was like, easy.
Oh, that's
whoa,
right. Okay.
Nelly. But the whole, somebody like him, I'm sure he's conscious of his own star power. And he also wants to get the best out of the film. And he's probably, I don't actually remember, but somebody with his stature is probably a producer on every film that he's an actor in. And so he's got responsibilities across the board. And I think he very actively puts people at their ease. And, you know, one of the lovely stories that I heard about him, he comes from theater as well. I mean, way, way back. And I think that ethos of kind of we're all on the same team has influenced who he is and how he works. And I heard from in doing News of the World, there was a house that was me and my husband, who was played by Neil Sandilands, our house. And often I was inside the house, even if the scene was outside, because I started inside and had to come outside. So there was one of the people who worked in the special effects department. His job was just to make smoke come out the chimney, you know, when the cameras were on. And so he was there all day preparing the smoke. And he said to me, so we had a chance to chat. And as I did, you know, spent a day chatting with Tom Hanks as well. And he said, yeah, Tom Hanks comes and sits and has lunch with us sometimes. I mean, not always, but just the sense that everybody is working towards the same project and nobody is more important than anyone else is something that he brings to the set. And so that starstruckness quickly translates into like human struckness, like, wow, what a guy, what a person of integrity and kindness and obviously brilliance. Because, and here's another thing with Tom Hanks, he gave as much to me in, when you're making a film, the camera is either turned on you or on the other person. And so you do your part, as many times on camera and probably equally as many times off camera. And just to be there for the other person's close up. And often people, when they're doing somebody else's close up, they will, to save their own energy. It's not necessarily not being generous. It's just, you only have so much to give. And so they'll kind of dial it down. They'll give a less connected performance. They'll not bring it as much. Tom Hanks gave as much when the camera was off him as when it was on him.
Wow.
And I thought that energy, I mean, that's the other thing, is that takes, apart from just wanting to be generous, it takes a ton of energy and stamina. And that was inspiring to watch.
Yeah, there's a look that he has that he uses it in a few movies, maybe a little more than a few. He has a look, Winsome, where it's a look in his eyes where it's distress, it's concern, it's sadness. I mean, the look alone almost brings me to tears. He uses it with you when he first brings Helena
Zengel.
Who's phenomenal.
Johanna.
Yes, when he brings Johanna to you, he uses it because he's just starting to figure things out in his head. He's got that look. Boy, were you great in that scene as well. And my question for you is: are the Leonbergers, are they good people, just caught up in hard times?
That's exactly how I felt it. I suppose even when you're playing a villain, you have to get into the heart of why that person acts that way, because most people, I think there are very few people who actually think of themselves as villains. And so I think that they are absolutely hard scrabble type people. They're close to the land. Every day is survive or die, root hog or die. And so they have, it's a physical thing. As my dad, who grew up on a farm, used to say, Dad grew up on a farm in Washington State and then ran away to Alaska, where he worked construction. And his relation to the earth and to life and death and to the kind of things that built America, that tenacity that one needs if you're going to homestead in a rough land. Dad understood that, and so that was a little bit part of our upbringing as children. And so, yes, I think they're hardworking farmers. And one of the things that in the second scene, one of the things that was sort of extraordinary actually in working on that film is that they rewrote the ending because and ended up having a whole nother scene with me and my husband where we've tied up Johanna, the little girl.
Right.
And I had a lot to think about that, because obviously tying up a child is a terrible thing to do. And yet one of the lines that I say is I say, we had to tie her up. She ran away. And I think about that because we've already seen in that film, what happens when you run away? There are bandits with guns. There are dust storms and deadly weather conditions. There are wild animals. I mean, running away leads very likely to death.
Right.
And so tying up a child may be the lesser of two evils. And that's certainly the way I chose to think about it. I know that people who see that film will obviously think of my character as a very harsh, cruel person. And I completely understand that. But that's not how I felt it playing that role. I felt that I was a person who had some very difficult decisions to make and made them as best I could.
Yeah, that's well said. And the real telling scene is when Anna's talking to Captain Kidd, and she's talking about the brutal way that Johanna lost her mother and her sister. And then, as you mentioned, Neil earlier, who's really great in this, and she kind of says, he kind of says, extra hands, she must work. So the times were indicative of how they acted, right? I don't think they were set to hurt this girl, but then again, I don't think they really considered, Anna and Wilhelm, how much she's actually been through, what she's seen at such a young age,
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I think that, in this part of the 20th century, we're so much more connected to people's psychology. We talk about pain in a way that is pretty new. I mean, if you're on social media and people are talking about depression and anxiety and that kind of stuff, that's new. People used to hide that stuff. And not that they didn't always feel it. I don't think the human condition has changed that much, but the way we address these things has. And so I think back in the 19th century, you got on with it. You didn't linger on that. And so the idea of my character sitting down with Helena Zengel, the incredible little girl who played
Good Lord. Oh my
Johanna,
gosh.
and talking it out, I don't think that would have been part of the life. I mean, I would imagine a dinner at that table to have started with a kind of Lutheran prayer and maybe have been fairly silent.
Yeah. Is it more difficult with a child actor? I mean, obviously when the camera isn't rolling, I would assume you guys are planning out, there's table reads and dialogue and so forth. Is it different? Does the rules change a bit when a child actor is involved? Well,
I mean, I'll give you a story. Tom Hanks nicknamed Helena Zengel Meryl. He said that she just knew what to do.
Right.
She obviously she is a child actor, but she's also not. She's she came fully formed. This girl is incredible, and so the difference with the child actor was that at the time she's now a teenager, and we're still in touch. She's a lovely, lovely young woman. But she was, a child at that point, and she would just the cameras would go off, and she'd be playing goofing around, and then go back to her spot and get in the zone in the snap of a finger. She was incredible, and one of the things that is remarkable about her performance in this film is that she's in almost every single scene. So
I never thought about that. You're right. Yeah.
She had a grueling schedule. And the film that she did, she got cast, I can only imagine, largely because of a film that she did in Germany called System Crasher or System Sprenger, in which she plays a girl who kind of is too difficult for the foster care system. And she's in every single scene of that film. So I think she was 10 when she filmed that and 11 when she filmed News of the World. So for a girl of that age to have done 2 feature films, both with, extraordinary actors, because the supporting cast in the German film is really wonderful, people at the top of their game. And then to move from that to working with Tom Hanks and being in practically every single scene with Tom Hanks is a very unusual journey. And so this girl is, I think, a very unusual child actor. And I'm so excited to watch where her career goes.
Yeah. And it goes to your point of Paul Greengrass's style of being so reassuring. I mean, with an actor like that and the amount of times she's in and her schedule, that rapport right there. I mean, that's having a director that has that mentality and has that vision. It helps make this film what it is. Yes, absolutely. It was an amazing film and really an amazing portrayal of life at that time. Yeah. Any coincidence that Ray McKinnon and Mayor Winningham are in this and in Dopesick? I think just the coincidence is like, who do you want to play? And their husband and wife in both. I think, right? I think that's right. How crazy is that? And Ray McKinnon was in Deadwood as well. Oh, he's so good. I it's just that they're both so good. I would imagine that who do we want for this role? We want Mayor Winningham, and who do we want for this role? We want Ray McKinnon. I suppose that's the only coincidence. But no, I don't know. I didn't get to work with them, right. My scenes weren't together with them. Neither in Dopesick. That was the sort of interesting thing in Dopesick, which I hope everyone will watch. I hope loads of people will watch, because it tells an absolutely essential true tale about how OxyContin was pushed on people and how the opioid crisis was really a manufactured crisis. And so I hope that when people watch this and see how it unfolds, that the idea of decriminalizing addiction will follow, and providing medical support to drug addiction, so that we move beyond a kind of notion of addicts as criminals and get them the support that they need. Yeah, and I'm dying to dive into Dopesick in a second. I wanted to say, though, you are just so amazing in News of the World, and that had to be said.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I did not mention the cinematography, Dariusz Wolski and James Newton Howard's score. This is how you make a movie. This is just, in my opinion, it's one of the best of the last decade for sure. And and to see Tom Hanks in a Western, it's fantastic. It's sort of, when Jimmy Stewart did a Western, and maybe is Tom Hanks our Jimmy Stewart, maybe. He's our Tom Hanks is what he is. But I think to step into that genre, the Western genre was just wonderful to watch him bring his A game to that. Yeah. And the cinematography, I completely agree. There's that one shot where buffalo are running over the plain, and it's really it just makes your stomach flip like you're on the top of a roller coaster. It's so exciting and wild. So you mentioned Dad when you're talking about News of the World, and I hope I'm not out of line by saying this, because I think I've heard this in an interview with you before. Mom struggled with alcoholism, I think, Winsome, and I hope I'm okay saying that.
Yes, indeed. I wrote a play about Mum called "This Is Mary Brown" that dealt with Mum's alcoholism. It came after we left the house. Mum wasn't an alcoholic growing up. It was, I think, when all the children were gone, that she was alone, and turned to habits that weren't good for her.
Yeah, and Dopesick is one of I'm glued to it. I am through 3 episodes. The reason I don't go straight through this, I have a 1-year-old, and we're always, when we put her down, she's up and down, so it's an infrequent schedule. But every spare moment I have, I am into Dopesick. It's a very difficult watch, Winsome, but I feel like a very necessary watch, and it's really, really well done. Mm-hmm. You know, let me ask you, you mentioned great directors, right? So Barry Levinson does the first 2 here. What is his style like?
Well, I mean, I'll say his style, I suppose we can look at all his great films to watch his style. He just gets such great kind of...
the natural, right? Yeah, he's...
comic and yes, natural, funny stories right from Diner all the way on through. But, you know, when the scenes that we were doing with him were... They had a lot of people. And so I think he and it was during COVID. I mean, that's when I came to do my first scenes with Dopesick, they were the scenes in the museum where I come in as Theresa Sackler with Jamie Ray Newman, who plays Kathy Sackler, and she's telling me to go and see the latest Terrence McNally play. And I get this great line, a really funny line written by Danny Strong about Terrence McNally's plays, which was so fun. Anyway, we were all in masks and shields until the camera rolled. So it wasn't really a time of much chatting. I think, I mean, especially for me, I think, so I can't, the style was, I mean, he gets these wonderful, quick performances out of everyone and does it in a really efficient way. And to manage that in COVID times, when everyone, you can't see their faces, was remarkable. I mean, it just super mastery of his work.
Mm. And this is a heartbreaking story, right? For so many reasons, right? Because you have these sales reps who are no different than the person selling drugs on the corner. Right? They're maybe worse, I think. You know, it's the way they targeted the poor, the way they looked at a map and decided, you know what? This is, in this case, you know, this is a hard mining town, lot of injuries daily with a profession like that. Painkillers would certainly prove to be beneficial here. Like the way they mapped it out, the way it was calculated, it's almost diabolical. It is diabolical, Winsome.
Yeah, absolutely true. Years ago, I had read an article in the New Yorker about the Sacklers, and I was gutted about the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma, and the fact that when it was clearly discovered that OxyContin wasn't working. I mean, even if we give them the benefit of the doubt that they did believe that maybe at the beginning that it wasn't addictive, except why would they? They never ran a single study. They just said it. And got the FDA to approve that label that said, that sort of intimated that time release makes something less addictive. But there was not a single study to prove that. And one of the things you learn in Dopesick is kind of why, because they still agreed that it was a class 2 narcotic. And so they're like, well, therefore we don't need to do a study. We're already saying it's a narcotic. So we can just say that it's, less addictive and keep it a class 2. And so that is what allowed these sales reps to go and lie to doctors. And you were saying, are the sales reps worse than drug dealers on the street? And I don't know. I mean, I guess, is it even worth saying who's better or worse? But the sales reps for Purdue were feeding doctors lies, whereas the drug dealer on the street probably isn't. You know what you're getting when you buy that bag of whatever on the street. And those sales reps were selling a lie. They were selling an addictive drug and they were selling a lie. And so in that way, maybe you're right. Maybe they are worse. And we see the fact that they are just trying to sell more and more pills. And even when the pills don't work in the way that they had, the sort of clients had, the doctors and the patients had been promised, they just say, well, you need to take more. And that's what really, sent that snowball rolling down the hill, and led to the massive opioid crisis that we see today.
Yeah, and the flip way that they just said, you know what, increase the dose. Like it's, you're deciding between having water or seltzer. Like it's just, you know what, just increase it. And scary. I was dying to ask you this question for some time now, and I'm trying to wrap my head around Michael Keaton's character, Dr. Fenix. I think, we talked a little about your character in News of the World, whether they're perceived as good or bad. I don't know. I think he's a good guy that wants the best for these people, but is a bit gullible and maybe naive in believing that there is universal kindness in humanity.
I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. We see him at the beginning. If you watch the first episode, he's a person who's devoted his life to being a very caring country doctor in this mining town, and Finch's Creek, and he's a good man, without a doubt. He's a good man, and when the Purdue reps give him the sample of oxy, he really doesn't have anything else to offer one of his patients, and so that kind of is what gets it started. And so yes, he is gullible. He does just take these people's word for it, and though it's not just their word. One of the things that's important is we see his character reading the medical journals. He's been told about OxyContin, and then he goes home and he reads all the medical journals.
Right.
And so he's doing his homework as absolutely best he can to see, is this really true? Is this drug really not addictive? And that's where, again, the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma are culpable, because they were paying for these articles.
Oh, no question.
They were paying for pain to be taught at medical schools as a science, and it was their flunkies who people on their payroll who were inventing a whole new condition, because pain, they were saying pain is a disease instead of pain being a symptom of a disease. Yeah. It's a very different way of thinking about it, because pain is a symptom, like fever is a symptom of infection. Fever isn't a disease. And pain in that same way is, this is me who's not a doctor saying it, but pain is a symptom of some other underlying problem. And in terms of Michael Keaton's character, I heard something on the radio once about doctors in rural areas and areas which were not as well served by large hospitals and physical rehab facilities. I'm not talking about drug rehab. I'm talking about, if you injure your shoulder, you'll go to physiotherapy, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that kind of physical rehab. Mm-hmm. Normally, if one has a physical injury, you should be given, some modicum of pain medicine like Tylenol or ibuprofen, and then physical rehab. And that just isn't available in a lot of these places. And so a lot of country doctors turn to pain relief as an alternative to physical therapy. And that is kind of something that you see here. And also in one of the characters' journeys, she says, I don't have time. I don't have time to do what my body needs. I don't have time for rest and recuperation. I need to keep working. And therefore, she takes the pain medicine in order to, in the OxyContin, to work through the pain, which is obviously not good medicine when you think about it. If your back is broken, it needs to be fixed. And that is kind of part of our larger societal problem with medicine and the fast pace of life, that, it used to be, and in other countries it still is, that rest is really a part of medical treatment. You go in for a surgery and you'll be kept in hospital for a day or two or 3 or 4 to rest and to really heal before you're sent home. That's not the case here. They really, in our hospitals, we churn people out. And so rest is not really part of our national culture.
No, that's really well said. And getting back to Dr. Fenix, he's a bit of a therapist too, so he clearly loves the people he works with. From your point of view, what is it like? We talked about News of the World and having one director. What is it? How do you like having a show like Dopesick where you have 4 directors, right? You have 2, 2, and 2, and 2. How is it adjusting to different styles, or do you find that the way the directors pick up what the last one did and direct it, it's just a smooth transition? You don't really notice it.
I think it is a smooth transition. I think that they're all working towards telling the same story. And so while one director might have a different personality than another, I think in terms of the art and the arc of the story, they're all on the same page. And, you know, I had that with Supergirl as well, working with different directors. And you always have the showrunner. You have the kind of, and I mean, Danny Strong was there on set at all times. And so, you know, there's a continuity even in the change of directors. So I enjoy it. I mean, it's wonderful to work with new and different people and to see how they might choose to, you know, treat a certain moment differently.
Yeah, it's funny because I can't, I feel like, and I've heard you say this in another interview, I can't find, I feel like there should be so much more on the Sacklers. They definitely tampered or did something with the internet where their information is limited, because I can't find a ton. Like, I feel like it should be out there. I mean, I'm not trying to, well, yes, I am trying to imply something. I just feel like something's been done here where if you want to read up on them, it's very limited.
That's absolutely true. No, they wiped the internet. I don't know how, but they absolutely did. Because if you think of my character, Theresa Sackler, she's received a damehood. She's Dame Theresa Sackler. She's been at 5, you know, I mean, there are museums and galleries named after her and her husband, Mortimer Sackler. And I mean, how many ribbon cuttings must she have been at? How many times must she or her husband have been in front of a podium presenting something or giving an award or receiving an award? Hundreds, thousands maybe. And none of that footage exists on the internet. It's all gone. What you can find on them, and this is sort of what all of us had to rely on, was, you know, or speaking for myself, what I had to rely on was a few articles that had already been printed in magazines that spoke to them and had pictures of them with their children. So because they'd been printed, they kind of still existed, but no video. So when I was trying to find out what was Theresa Sackler's voice like, because, you know, there are loads of English accents. She's from Staffordshire, and I didn't know what she sounded like necessarily. So I was lucky enough to find people, a couple of English artist friends who had been at events with her and had heard her speak.
Yeah, so, you know, and again, a great cast, and Michael Stahlberg has a wonderful way of just playing evil in the most silent of ways. It's just mind-boggling to look at this, Winsome, where the path of destruction that they left behind, and still going on, I should say, probably. I don't know. It's just the amount of lives that were ruined by this, by their actions. It's beyond depressing, you know?
Absolutely. And Michael Stuhlbarg, whose performance is spectacular as Richard Sackler, one of the things that's kind of great is that you see a lot of what he's focusing on is his place in the family and his place in the world. He's really looking to just be the biggest, and at whatever cost, because his goal is not about helping people with their illness or their pain, really. It's about becoming the most important Sackler. I mean, outdoing his uncle. So there's a lot of kind of, you know, Oedipal, I mean, maybe that's the wrong word, but, you know, the stuff of deep psychology and Greek tragedy in his character.
Yeah. My last question for you is, what do your kids think of Mom and the great actor that lives under the roof?
Well, first of all, I love my kids. They're teenagers, and I adore teenagers. I love them. I love their friends. I love all the like stuff they're going through, even the stuff that I don't love. That like I sort of love that too. Like my older daughter Maud, I was so pissed off. She got a tattoo. She's 16. And I cried. And then I'm like, oh, get over it. My husband told me to get over it. So I did. And I mean, this is what you've got coming. At some point, they just, you know, they get their own, you know, they're on their own course. And I love that. I love that about them. And in terms of what they think of me, one of the things that I'm sure in talking to other actors, you know, that, these days auditions are done often from home, self-tapes. And so both my daughters and my husband have become really good readers with me. And I really enjoy that because they're so natural. They're both really kind of talented actors themselves, though neither of them so far seems to want to do it in any kind of professional way, but who knows? But they'll be reading with me and they'll be like, "Yeah, Mummy, that one was fake. Let's do that again." and so they're to have that intimate view of your own work is incredibly helpful. But I think they're proud. I think they're both great consumers of really good entertainment. Like my daughter Maud keeps encouraging me to watch a German show, Dark, which since I like in News of the World and other German. I've played a lot of Germans, as I said before, so I was like, yeah, it's great to be up on what's coming out of Germany. So anyway, I think they're proud and supportive, and they're supportive in a literal way in that they do the readings with me.
Yeah, it's a total team effort, and so nice to hear that. Winsome, I can't thank you enough for giving me all this time. You are really a wonderful person, and you know what I think about your acting ability, so thank you so much.
It's been such a joy to be here with you, and I hope we get to meet and chat again.
I love that.
Thank you for listening to Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can also connect with Monday Morning Critic on Instagram and Facebook, MDM Critic on Twitter, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are found. All episodes available, www.mmcpodcast.com.